Go for it.
So I bought her from a really esteemed breeder in Michigan.
Okay.
That has all the behavior and the certifications and everything. She was unbelievable. We socialized the shit out of her. We did a lot of research on Rottweilers.
Yeah.
She was unbelievable for like the first 10 months. We could take her to dog parks. We can go off leash. We took her to Downtown Dogs, which is kind of close to here, just because I had a connection to Ari, and we did the board and train, and she was great. We didn't ever use the e-collar, which we now realize after talking to people is somewhat of a mistake, and we're ready to kind of do things. But when she was like 14 or 15 months, also she has elbow dysplasia, she limps. She takes, we're taking supplements, Dasequin, Flexidin with her. But when she got to like 14 or 15 months, I was out of town on a trip, and she's super protective of my fiance, and she, on a walk, jumped up on someone and kind of like knocked him over and bit them. Not like a vicious bite, but it was a puncture, and like I knew that wasn't okay. And this was coming after a week where she got kicked out of daycare basically for nipping a dog's tail. And none of these things had ever happened, and she was always like the sweetest, nicest girl. And kind of ever since then, she's been super reactive. And she got attacked when she was younger, but
What age?
maybe 7 months.
Okay.
A pit bull attacked her, and it kept trying to hump her, and like it just like she kept on knocking it off, and then it attacked her.
Is this at a dog park?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we sent her back to Ari, even though he was like, you shouldn't do that. But we needed to do something. She just bit someone. So, and he didn't seem to think it was that big of a deal, to be honest. But my fiance and I were like, well, that can't happen, especially with a Rottweiler.
Yeah.
Like, that happens again.
Well, it's liability.
Yeah, totally. We got
Yeah.
lucky we got the guy to sign his rights away and like paid him off. So it's not an official bite or anything. But she, on walks now, she still heals, but like the second, like I'd say 80% of the time she's fine, but she'll still lunge at certain people. If people are opening doors, she'll lunge at them. For some reason, dogs seem to freak out at her, and she freaks out right back after dogs start barking. And then when I have people over, she is like overly excited and will nip them and like jump up on them if they make sudden movements. And the second people are petting her, start walking away, she freaks out, like full on aggressively barking if someone tries leaving my door. Even myself or my fiance sometimes. But it's just gotten to the point where we need to do something about like this. I've gotten to the point where I just want to be able to have people over and like not have to worry that something might set my dog off, and God forbid it bites someone I know, and like on walks, I just like want to stop getting to the point where it's like I'm worried that she might lunge at every person who walks by for no reason. So that's kind of, I mean.
What's her age now?
She just turned 2, or she's turning 2 in like a couple days.
Okay. So let me just make sure I got the timeline right. Around 6 to 7 months, attacked by a pit bull at the dog park.
Maybe, yeah, 6 to 8 months. Yeah.
Okay, 6 to 8 months. At 10 months, is that when you sent for the board and train?
She went to the board and train probably right before that. Maybe right after. Yeah.
Okay.
They didn't take her until she was at least 6 months, so I'm guessing we took her at around 7 or 8 months.
Okay, because there's something that you mentioned at 10 months. I'm trying to remember what that was. And then at 14, 15 months, is that when you saw the lunge?
Yeah, that's
okay.
When she bit someone, maybe somewhere in the 14, 16-month range. Her
Okay.
personality completely shifted to a more reactive dog.
Yeah. And then now she's 2 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when guests coming in and stuff like that, seems like territorial behavior.
Yeah, 10 months she probably started developing.
The dysplasia?
Yeah.
I gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to get my timeline right.
Totally understand.
So all good information. So a lot of the stuff you're saying makes sense to me as a trainer. So there's 3 pivotal timelines in a dog's life where we get what we would call considerable personality shifts. 6 months, a year, and 2 years. Okay. Now they can happen at different times.
Yeah, give or take a couple of months.
Yeah. So at 6 months, it's not uncommon where a dog will be attacked at the dog park, but typically it's more instantaneous, where it's like one day they're dog friendly, the next day they're not dog friendly, because the attack has caused distrust. Okay. It doesn't seem like you had that because she was still going to daycare and dog park afterwards, correct? With no issue?
Correct.
Okay. So it looks like it didn't really impact her, at least immediately at the time. It doesn't mean that it didn't have some kind of impact, but usually it's pretty night and day. If you're going to have a catalyst of a dog going from dog friendly to dog aggressive, that's usually that's a very common like timeline.
Yeah.
My dog, 6 months, he got attacked. Now they're dog aggressive. I go, yeah, pretty common. Okay. At a year, so at 6 months, we have what we call 2-year-old brain, teenager body. Okay. So have you heard of the terrible twos with kids?
Yeah.
That phrase, right? So I explain it the same to humans when referring to dogs. At 6 months, it's like terrible two's brain, teenager body. At a year, we have teenager brain, adult body. At 2 years, we have adult dog. Okay. So typically, when behaviors, if they don't crop up at 6 months, they'll crop up at around a year or a little bit after. Okay. So 15 to 6 months is a year and 3 to 4 months, right? So that to me falls right in line with the dog personality timeline. That's where you start to see things like territorial behavior, defensiveness, stuff like that, because now they're coming into their own.
Super territorial in our home too.
Yeah.
Like, she would 100% attack our upstairs neighbor if.
She had like
Yeah,
opportunity.
I feel like in her mind, he's breaking into our home every time he walks up the stairs.
Yeah,
Like,
to a degree, that is correct. So, and the other thing is you have a Rottie,
yeah.
who are meant to be protectors, right? So genetically, it's also just in her code.
Yeah.
Okay. Some things that don't help also, or is that the hip display or the elbow dysplasia, right? Because there's some I have to factor in now any kind of physical discomfort that there might be there. Which, if a dog has physical discomfort, or if they feel like, okay, this isn't working, it can heighten things because they're like, I'm vulnerable. Does that make sense? So then they can overcompensate. Other things that I'm noticing now is she's a bit on edge, a little bit overstimulated, a little bit of a nervous response. Like she's just settled right now, but you see how she's kind of alert to what she's hearing,
Yeah,
and like
she's
this.
insanely alert.
Yeah.
When we pass dogs, she looks at them backwards for like a block.
Mm-hmm. So that what we call that like kind of vigilant, kind of like hyper awareness, usually a sign of overstimulation and or anxiety. Right now, I'm picking up like a little bit of both, especially when you first came in. Not too surprising because this is the first time she's been here. It's a foreign environment, right? But like you see how she's still unable to settle here, like that little sniff that she just did. I'm sure if she hears another sound, she's probably gonna do that, right? That's usually a sign, yeah, of overstimulation. Overstimulation is the brain's inability to turn off, to relax. Okay, and a lot of times that's where problems tend to, how do you say, jump from, because the dog is already here, right? So it's very easy for them to launch into the next behavior, whether it be reactivity, territorial mindset, because they're already like this. Okay, so the key thing to the case like this is we want to bring them down here.
I guess one more thing that I should say, but we haven't started doing it yet, is we took her to Animal Insights and we have like she's prescribed like Prozac, but we don't want to like use it just yet.
My opinion is it doesn't do anything.
Okay, perfect.
Prozac, fluoxetine, triazidone, all those. So here's an example. I had a dog's name's Doug that I trained. He got kicked out of his veterinarian. The veterinarian used to board and do daycare for their clients. The dog is human aggressive, dog aggressive. They put him on trazodone, fluoxetine, and I think it was probably doggy Prozac or something, on 3 drugs. And he was still trying to attack people and dogs, okay? And then they ended up kicking her out of their boarding facility, and she's like, I've done everything you ask, and you're kicking me out now? Yeah. And so she found us. I trained the dog, got rid of all the reactivity stuff. He's definitely, how do you say, he's an extreme case. We made a ton of progress, but she has to be, how do you say, she's always in control. Yeah. He comes here, we've had no issue with him. He has now grown accustomed to my staff. He actually, like, I'll say like 6 months ago was the last time we saw him, started warming up to me because I was the bad guy. I did all the heavy lifting in that training, okay? So he finally came around and he started even licking me. I'm like, oh, okay, like you're starting to recognize I'm not an asshole, right? But we've had no issue with him here. So when it comes to the drug stuff, it was gabapentin. It was fluoxetine, trazodone, gabapentin, okay? And she took him off fluoxetine and triazidone. She kept him on the gabapentin. And then, interesting enough, we had a very difficult time in the training where he's an 80-pound pitty. And we even had to do, at one point, 2 collars on him because he was so aggressive, he was overriding. And later on, I came to learn that gabapentin is a painkiller. Okay. So I'm in my head, I'm like, because the training was already done. we already get moved past everything. I'm like, I wonder if that was a factor in why he was just he was not stopping. You know, I expect it from like a 140, 150 pound dog because of the size. I don't expect it from an 80-pound dog. Okay, but otherwise, I mean, he's come here. He's great. We have no issues with him. He's not a social dog. He doesn't like other dogs. But with my staff, he's fine. He partakes in the day. Everything's fine, right? But if anything, in my experience with drugs, they're a variable that I can't account for because the dog can't tell you how they feel about it. You know, I have a friend who struggles with social anxiety. He was on medication for a time. He stopped taking the medication because he said he didn't like how it made him feel. So I go, okay, well, now we're giving medications to a dog that can't convey, this is making me feel weird, right? So, nowadays, everything is throw a pill at it. You know, you want to lose weight, throw a pill at it. Oh, you have anxiety, throw a pill at it. Or you're not happy, throw a pill at it. Or your dog wants to bite people, throw a pill at it, you know? And I believe that I'm sure there's people that do need medication, but I don't think everybody needs the medication, you know? When it comes to dogs, we want to think about how they address each other, which is why we do remote collar. I see you have a prong collar on her, right? So a prong collar is meant to mimic a dog bite. That's the way it looks, okay? So like if she got out of line, or at the daycare, right? She nipped the dog's tail, correct? Who knows what that dog was doing, right? Unless they told you, maybe the dog was annoying her. She's like, hey dog, you're getting out of line. She goes to nip the dog, right? That's a correction, that's not aggression, okay? The pit bull that went after her, right? He's trying to mount her. She says, hey, don't mount me. And then what happens is the pit bull wants to mount her. She goes, no. So the pit bull goes, well, I'll fight you for it. You see how that works? Dogs are physical creatures. They nip and bite. This is how they correct each other. This is how they show affection. This is how they play. I'm sure you've probably seen where they pull at their skin and their jowls and all that stuff, right? All that's perfectly normal. So the way I look at the e-collar is what I call a bite on a button, okay? When we condition it, we want the dog to perceive it similarly to a dog bite where they go, okay, I'm getting out of line, or I'm not supposed to do that, so on and so forth, okay? But e-collar does two things. E-collar can teach a dog what to do: sit, stay, come, place, heel. Those are all to do, right? Put your butt down, come to me, blah, blah, blah. And then not to do. Don't jump, don't bark, don't bite.
We have an e-collar, we just have never been, I don't know, we weren't initially comfortable using it, even though we know that we're at the point where we are more than comfortable finally
trying to use it, correct.
using it.
The collar that you have, do you know what brand it is?
I took a picture of it this morning. It is Mini Educator e-collar.
When did you buy it?
Ari or Downtown Dogs gave it to us as part of a package.
Okay, so you didn't pay for it?
No.
Okay, so that collar is meant for a 35-pound dog and under, hence Mini Educator, okay? The reason...
She probably was about 50 pounds at that, or 40 pounds at that point.
Sure. So, because she's like 70, 80?
She's 80 now, yeah.
80, yeah. So the issue with the Mini Educator is that we have a size discrepancy is because of the output.
Sure.
So I'm going to explain, explain everything. So the brand that we use is Dogtra. I used to use Mini Educator or Educator brand when I first started 12 years ago. I stopped 12 years ago because I felt they were making my cases more aggressive. I had 3 cases at the time that were reactive aggressive cases, and they all were getting worse. Okay, so I go, okay, the only thing here I can think of is the tool. Yep. So I went and I bought, with my own money, the Dogtra collars, and I said, here, you guys already threw out money for this, let's try this instead. They all made progress, okay? My theory is the way the stimulation is delivered is different. Educator tends to be sharper, Dogtra is duller, okay? And I think that's the reason why it was just agitating those cases at the time more, is just the way it was being delivered. Because they're both the same technology, they just feel slightly different, okay? So that is what we would call like a medium-low output collar. And she's a large dog, right? So we have like 4 different brands or models of the Dogtra brand that we use. And you can think of them as low power, medium high power, and high power. Okay, so like the low power is for a 15-pound dog and under, medium low is 35-pound dog and under, medium is 70-pound dog and under, high is 70-pound dog and over. Okay, so she'd be on a high-powered collar. The difference is how On a lower powered collar, you could be, for example, I have a daycare train. He's here for his first day today. He's on a mini educator. She upgraded to the Dogtra brand. She told me that she was correcting him at 80 out of 100 and he wasn't doing anything. And I told her it's because his stress levels are so high, 80 is not enough to cut through everything. Plus, it's a low powered collar. You have a 50-pound dog. She upgraded. I trained him this morning. His number was at 55 to start. We ended at 35 because we're getting more output from a lower level. Make sense? Yeah. So people always go, oh my God, high power. I'm like, it's literally the same thing. It's just you get more from less. Okay. So people tend to have an aversion with e-collar because of what they think it is. They usually think it's electrocution. There's also the term shock collar, right? Shock, just as FYI, comes from two different places. One, when e-collars first came out, they're not as refined as they are today. They had about 3, 5, maybe 10 levels. Today, with the brand that we use, we have 127 levels. Think of 10 and 127 as the same in intensity. We just have 117 more divisions.
Totally.
Right? So before, if you went 2 to 3, 2 to 3 could be a very drastic jump, right? It was shocking because it was so abrasive, especially if you have a 3 to 5 level collar and 3 is the same as 127, there's very little variance or options for variance there, okay? The other reason is in the positive only world, they don't use punishers, they don't use aversive tools, is they use terms like shock and pain and torture to deter people from using these tools because no one, of course, wants to shock their dog or anything like that, okay? So that's where the term shock collar comes from. We refer to it as an e-collar, electronic collar, remote collar. It's electric but not electricity is usually how I describe it to people.
Yeah.
There's not a current running through. It's all centralized to where the two probes are making contact, and that's where you'll see the muscle stimulator. Have you ever been to a chiropractor or physical therapist?
Yeah.
Have you ever had the TENS unit, the muscle thing? That's an e-collar, okay? And the way it feels is similar, but the way it operates is different. With the TENS unit, they would put the machine on, they would turn it up, and then you would tell them that's too much. They would lower it, and then it would just kind of do its job moving your muscles, right? To help break up scar tissue, to help your muscle relax, all that stuff. For dogs, it's similar. We find a number that the dog responds to, but it's not that's high enough that they respect it, but low enough that they're not like yipping and yelping all the time, okay? And that they can take repeatedly. Otherwise, it's not, because when we get like, for example, I had a case that was human reactive. When she showed up, she was on 100 maxed out from a previous trainer, okay? And she's like, yeah, whenever he acts out, I just remote him at 100. And the dog was I could see the dog was super paranoid because the collar wasn't conditioned correctly. And she was just assuming, well, aggression is bad. I'm just going to correct it at the highest level there is. And I go, no, that's incorrect. Yeah. We always start low, we work our way up. The dog will tell us what's appropriate to them.
You want to get the lowest threshold that works, right?
Correct, right? So as low as possible, but as high as needed is what I describe, okay? Because there is what is called a low-level e-collar training. The problem with low-level e-collar is they're usually operating at ridiculously low levels, like 3 to 5. And then they find themselves always going from 3 to 5 to these very high levels trying to correct things. Yeah. So it's this roller coaster of levels. And what we do is I find a level that's high enough that the dog goes, I want less of it, but is low enough that they can actually take the correction and then think about why the correction happened, okay? Ideally, we want the application of the collar to always decline over the course of time, okay? When I see that, so in the beginning, there's a lot of it because we're training, but once the dog understands, it starts to dip down. If the collar goes up and then stays up, and then the owner's like, yeah, Jesse, you have to use this 100 times a day, I go, you're doing something wrong. Yeah. Okay, I was like, because you should already be at a point where this is being used maybe once in a blue moon, okay? So I help you figure all that stuff out, okay? Now, in your particular case, when it comes to that human interaction, right, where you said that she knocked down someone, right? Was this at like nighttime? Do you know anything more about it?
Walking in the morning, there was a big guy with headphones in that was just minding his own business, and she was with only my fiance. I was out of town, so she's extra protective over my fiance, and
okay.
Just jumped up, tipped him over, and punctured his skin.
Where did she get him? On the arm?
Right here, I think.
Okay, so she went at him.
Lower, yeah.
I gotcha.
It wasn't like, it was a puncture wound, but it wasn't like, she like bit and
let go.
released.
She could have done more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot more.
Yeah.
Sit.
So, because since it wasn't you there, right? I'm sure there's more information there that can tell us why that happened. She most likely thought that guy looked suspicious.
Yeah.
And like you said, she was with you said your fiance, and was being more territorial. Um, Also, just how much slack there was on the leash. Like, was the dog walking like this? Was the dog on a short leash?
Yeah. No,
Was she
this was before we really like.
got strict?
Yeah. We were like, anyone can pet our dog because she's never had an issue. Oh, we're just gonna walk like we didn't really fully understand that we had like an 80-pound Rottweiler. Like, and I think she was just like,
Yeah.
and letting the dog lead, and then I was like, at that point that happened, I was like, well, we need to train our dog and we need to train ourselves because like we can do things to mitigate the risks of our dog biting people too. So we started healing her pretty aggressively after that.
Sure.
That's it.
Yeah. And that's a good way to put it. Is you really don't realize what you have until things go south one day, right? And thankfully, in my experience, as bad like it's obviously not good that happened.
Yeah.
Is she could have done more, right? Like the fact that there's only one puncture, like that tells me a lot, because I get clients that are like, yeah, Jesse, my dog was bitten 5 people, never broken skin, never punctured, and I go, well, you have a coward. So the good thing is, yes, the dog's trying to bite, but they're not really confident in biting, right? And I get some dogs like, you better watch it because they will nail you,
Yeah.
shake and all that other stuff, right? So, the question so far about any of this?
Not of what we've discussed so far.
Okay. Did you have a question off of what we discussed?
No.
Oh.
Just like, figuring out next steps.
Sure. So the way we approach these things is whenever there's human reactivity or aggression, I always tell the owners you want to do the training yourself, okay? Because you're the one that's going to have to live with her. If it was dog reactivity or dog aggression, that's easier because we're not having to worry about people, right? But people is where there's liability. People are who can sue you, right? Funny enough, like I've had it happen where clients' dogs were attacked by off-leash dogs and all that kind of stuff, right? And dogs are looked at as property, right? So when it comes to like the legal stuff, like that's a little bit different than as opposed to like if your dog actually bit a person, where a person can turn around and go like, hey, you owe me money because I couldn't work and so on and so forth, right? So when it's dog to dog, it's easier because we're not having to worry about people. But when it comes towards people, I always tell everybody, you want to do the training yourself because you're the one that has to live the rest of your life with this dog. She's 2 now, right? Roddy's lived to what, 13, 15?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got at least another 10 to 12 years with her, right? Is you want to be as educated as possible so that if things ever go south, because 12 years is a long time, right? That leaves you a big window for something to happen, is you want to be able to know or to regain control when you've lost control, okay? So like over the holiday weekend, we had like 50 to 60 dogs here for boarding. And it's quiet right now. We get the occasional bark, the occasional whine, but it's not rampant, right? Because I know what I'm doing. I run a structured daycare. Across the street, there's another daycare. You can hear the dog during the week barking from like a block to 2 blocks away. So I already know how to handle this kind of stuff. But it comes down to the owner knowing how to handle this, okay? So I suggest in person for sure. And then the next steps are
Supposed to board and train.
correct, okay? Board and train is convenient because we do all the work for you, but you're not getting the hands-on, right? So like, let's say for whatever reason, she's having difficulty with the training. I can work her through it, no problem, right? But then if one day you're having issues with the training, you're not going to know what to do because you don't know how to fix it. Does that make sense? When you do the training yourself, if she acts out, if she becomes reactive, if she's being resistant, if it's not going as smooth as we're hoping, I'm walking you through it so that you go, okay, this is how I fix these problems. That's like the greatest tool you can pull from training is if things go south, how do I recover from it? Does that make sense?
Totally.
So I always recommend in person, especially when it comes to human stuff.
And we can cover dog stuff in person too, right?
Correct. Yeah. So depending on how much you want to cover is what really dictates the length of the program. Okay. Now, if your dog is anxious, okay, I cannot make her unanxious, but we can help her learn how to handle it in a healthier fashion. Okay. But do keep in mind that the progress that you're making with your dog is due to your effort. It's due to your application of rules and consistency. I think there's a notion in the world of once I train my dog and they're a good dog, I don't need to do anything, or they're just a good dog. I go, no. It's you're doing a good job of being a good owner and giving lots of feedback to the dog, letting them know what the boundaries are. Okay. So the first 2 classes are always going to be on heel. Okay. I teach a very strict heel. I want a completely slack leash. I don't care what the environment is, and the dog is right on my hip. Okay, if I take 1 step, they take 1 step. I take 5 steps, they take 5 steps. I take 3, they take 3. I want them to mimic my every move. It sounds super complicated. It sounds like it takes a long time. It does not. Okay, we usually get it by the first class, if not by the second class. It's just a matter of, is the owner following and reinforcing the instructions? Okay. So the first class, the reason why we always cover heel is 1, leash pulling and leash reactivity are the 2 most common things that we deal with. Okay, those are the 2 most common things that humans want to correct with their dogs. Heel helps fix both of those things, so I always like to start with that first. E-collar is a stressor. Okay, don't be surprised if in the beginning your dog looks more anxious because the e-collar is stress, training is stress, so she's becoming anxious as a stress response. We work them through it. Okay, that's actually what helps them to learn how to handle their anxiety better. People, when they see their dog go under stress, their instinct typically is to protect the dog from the stressor, but then the dog never learns how to handle stress. We have to expose the dog to stress, work them through stress, and then they go, okay, I don't need to feel this way when I go under stress. Everything is fine. Okay. Also, most people in the city of Chicago walk their dogs 3 times a day, 7 days a week. So that's 3 times a day, 7 days a week. They get to practice this exercise. Okay, so the more you expose, the faster the dog gets better, the faster they get over the collar.
Do you think it's counterintuitive? Or we have a dog walker come twice a day during the weekdays, and we walk her after work too. But like, we would ideally want him to be educated too.
So if everybody's on the same page, that's great. If your dog walker does not reinforce the training, it does not impact your training.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. Dogs learn by association. So it's kind of, I call it like the grandparent effect, where like growing up, my grandma I'm the firstborn of like all her kids, grandchildren, whatever. So obviously she let me get away with stuff. But then my mom would be like, what the hell? I'm like, no, you can't do that. So I learned with mom, okay, these are the rules. With grandma, these are the rules, right?
Makes sense.
Yep. Same thing for dogs. So it will not impact your training. Okay. As long as you're consistent and again follow the instructions, we're going to make progress. Okay. So the first 2 classes are always heel. Part 1, you show up with your dog, you have everything ready to go. I coach you through everything. If there's any hiccups, I walk you through it. We work through it. Then I go rinse and repeat. You come back a week later. We talk. Any progress points? Do we see any reactivity? So on and so forth. You give me feedback. I'll go over and make a couple of tweaks. We're going to work on the second half of heel. Again, walk you through some stuff. Go off, rinse and repeat. Okay. By the 3rd class, that's what really dictates how we move. Okay. So if you're like, man, Jesse, like this is night and day, right? And everything is going smoothly. I go, great. What would you like to cover? Obedience-wise, I usually go into recall, because recall takes the longest of all the commands to teach. Okay, so I usually like to get it in as soon as possible. So the owners, as the program is continuing, can continue to practice recall. And if anything happens or they have any questions, they can always ask as we're going through the program. Okay. I usually like to also cover stationary control with the place command, which is go there, don't move. That helps like when guests come over and stuff like that. And then
yeah, we have an elevated bed and stuff.
Okay.
But she doesn't follow it as well as she used to.
Okay. So we would do a refresher on that. And then when it comes to the how to introduce her to people and all that stuff, I would say by the 5th class, you'd already have the heel, you'd have don't move, and then you have recall. Okay, we just get the obedience out the way. It also helps prime her for the behavioral stuff, because when we're teaching the e-collar through the obedience, you're teaching her what the language is, right? So if we go to push socialization, let's say, I go to pet her with my sleeve, and she goes to bite the sleeve, we need to correct that behavior, right? Is that by that point, she's had plenty of conditioning with the collar, is that she's going to understand like, okay, mom and dad are disagreeing with this behavior, okay? Not uncommon in the beginning. You might see what looks like the dog agitating more with the collar. And that's because the collar isn't at a setting that's getting them to think maybe I should stop what I'm doing. Okay. So again, we work through all this stuff, but people tend to get nervous because like, oh, this went worse, right? And I go, yes, that's part of the process. Sometimes the dog takes a correction, stops behavior. Other times the dog just gets more pissed off. But I'm there to help you figure all that stuff out. Okay. So it could go one of a couple of ways. If the first two classes are going great, technically speaking, we can jump into socialization as early as the third class. I usually say I would, in this case, suggest going probably more to at least at the earliest, the fourth class, just so we can get stationary control. And I would push back recall, because stationary control is what allows you to have guests come over and you can send her away and not have to worry about her so much while we're also working on socialization. Okay. When it comes to socialization, I have exercises that we cover. And I show you, if you're introducing her to a person, this is how you want to go about it. There's a correct way and an incorrect way. And then you go and rinse and repeat. And this is where all the work is, okay? It's not, oh, I'm going to socialize her with 2 people, or I'm going to socialize her with 5 people, and all of a sudden she's fixed. Like, this is work, okay? We cannot make her like people. So if there's someone that you're trying to socialize with her and she's just like, nope, I don't care about this person, like, you cannot make her like them. Okay, that's just that's a reality. Okay, just like with humans.
I don't really care about that. I just care about her not
Being reactive.
Yeah.
Cool, because that makes things a lot easier.
Yeah.
Okay, now.
No, she doesn't need to lick and be amazing for every person. Just don't attack them.
That's correct. Yeah, that's coexistence is always what we're looking for, and then it's not to say that we don't push for more. Because I like to push as much as possible. Because if we aim for 110%, we'll get closer to 100 than if we only aim for like 70%. Okay, but realistically speaking, I always tell everybody the bare minimum is just coexistence. Don't try to attack anybody. Mind your business. Blah 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 blah. Okay. Now, you mentioned dog socialization. Okay, so are you wanting to be able to take her to the dog park again, or what's your goal? What's your goal?
I'd like to, yeah. That would be a great goal to have, is like a far reach goal, like kind of just like in general, like when she's walking, she gets too focused on other dogs passing by, and she must act a certain way because a lot of dogs start aggressively barking, and then the second they do, she does, and she can't focus on anything else except for that dog for the next block.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, she's in an arousal state and she's not letting it go. So all of that we can do with remote collar. Okay. One, we don't want to see the reactivity in the first place, but sometimes that happens. Let's say she's minding her business, the other dog's reactive. Now she's like, well, you're putting out threat to me, so I'm going to reciprocate, right? Is we can cut through all that stuff that we see that's not uncommon. So, but remote collar, the reason why it's such a great tool is with your prong collar, you have a limitation. You can only correct so firmly before you go, that's about the best I can do, right? Whereas e-collar gives us 127 levels of variation for correction. Okay.
And I would love her to go back to the dog park, but I mean, we're moving into suburbs in like 7 months, and we have a big backyard, so like it's not as important as it was now, because we can just play with her in the big area. But ideally, I'd like to, but that's just not as important as the other things.
Sure. Yeah. So the first 2 classes are really, again, like what shapes how things move forward. Worst comes to worst, like let's say you're like, hey Jesse, like she's still struggling with dogs that bark at her, whatever, right? Then the third class becomes, we'll bring out one of our dogs and work on controlled context reactivity. Okay. So like I had a case, she was like 25-ish pounds, and in 23, she was like the worst reactivity case I had for the year. I actually put her video up on my YouTube channel. Her name's Georgia. And even though she was 25 pounds, she was on the e-collar that I'm recommending for your dog, because I could already see the severity of the behavior. I'm like, this dog isn't going to cut it with a low-powered collar. She needs a high-powered collar. And sure enough, we needed to max out the collar to get her to actually stop the behavior. But because the owner followed my instructions, we stopped the reactivity. Awesome. Okay. But that's usually that's what holds people back, is they usually feel bad if needed when we go higher, because they feel like they're hurting the dog. And I tell them, like, dogs bite each other.
I mean, if you were to say that to us like 5 months ago, 6 months ago, we would have been less than, like, we're at the point where we're like, we understand what the e-collar does. We don't feel bad anymore. We know it works.
Sure. Yeah. Does that all make sense? So in terms of length of time for the program, um, I would probably put you at around 9-ish in-person classes. 6 at the bare minimum, 12 is if you want the whole 9 yards. Okay. So we do 3, 6, 9, and 12-week in-person programs. The 3-week program, it's 1 day a week for an hour, is really for people that want to address the reactivity and leash walking. It's 3 classes. I know by the 3rd class, if the reactivity is not done by then, by the 3rd class, we'll just squash it. Okay. A 6-week program. So think of the 3-week as I want to walk my dog, right, and not really have to worry about anything. The 6-week is I want to walk my dog and recall my dog, so come when called. 9-week is walk my dog, call my dog, and then go to restaurants where they don't move or whatever, like, place, don't move for the next 2 hours. 12-week program is I want a fully off-leash trained dog. Sit, stay down, come, place, heel. We cover all 6 commands and build them to an off-leash level, okay?
So with this like 6, 9, 12-week program, like what are like we both work, so like how lenient are we in like
So if you have like a rotating schedule, or let's say you're scheduled all over the place, you would email Tina and say, here's our schedules. She cross-references your schedule with my schedule, and she goes, okay, our first class can be here, and there might be like a 2-week gap, 3-week gap, right? So my client before you, he's a basketball coach. We had the first class, and I didn't see him for a month before the second class. It's not a problem.
Do you do like early mornings or after 5 o'clock or weekends?
Yeah, my schedule is all over the place because everybody's schedule is different. Usually,
we both work 9 to 5:30-ish, and it's like kind of hard to like have to take an hour off work.
yeah, you're talking about Monday through Friday?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
And I would want both of us to be there.
I would agree.
Every single lesson.
I would agree. Yes. So yeah, it's not a problem, right? And so you're coming at a good time because we're coming from the lull of the holiday. People, they're budgeting for traveling, they're budgeting for Christmas and all that stuff. Dog training is usually not top of the list.
Yeah.
And then it happened like right after New Year, just an influx of consultation forms came through. So you're coming at a good time. Okay. So yes, that's not a problem. I train weekends, and my schedule is usually the opposite of people because people are typically 9 to 5. So my evenings and weekends are typically where I do all my trainings.
Awesome.
Okay. So,
what are the prices of those?
it's on my website, and Tina will also probably send them to you just so you have them. I believe off the top of my head, the 6-week program is around, I want to say 1,500-ish, and then the 9-week is like 2,250, and I think the 12-week is like 27.5 or something.
I saw like aggression that was like 4,000.
Yes. So what that one is,
Between those two.
so let's say you do a 6-week program.
Yeah.
You do a 6-week program, and then you decide, hey, Jesse, this is great. I want 6 more. You would pay the cost of 6 more. Okay. We don't prorate programs. Or if you did a 12-week, same thing. You'd pay the cost of a 12-week. In the future, if you wanted an extra class, you would pay for the individual class. When it comes to the behavior programs, the behavior program is lifelong. Okay. It's not, we're training the dog for the rest of its life. I come in and we do 12 to 16 classes right off the bat. We address the behavior and we fully off-leash train the dog. Okay. So you're going to get an off-leash trained dog, pending, of course, you're doing the homework, regardless. And then we also work on the behavior. But let's say we reach class 16 and I go, I think you need 2 more classes. I do the 2 more classes, you don't pay extra. Let's say you're like, Jesse, this is great. I'm so happy. Thank you. I go, great. Thank you for the opportunity. Call us if you need anything. A year and a half later, something happens, right? Maybe somebody walked into your home unannounced and then she bit them. You give us a call. You tell us what happened. I go, okay, that's going to take me 3 classes. We do it no charge.
And that's free.
Yes, for the rest of the dog's life. So the expensive program that you saw, it comes with like a warranty, if you will, is that we do the initial training, and at a point I go, this is about the best that we can get. Let me know if anything pops up, and if anything comes up in the future, you're like, hey, could you, this happened, can you please come out? And I'll assess it again, and I'll say 3 classes. I'll address it, but that's included because you're buying a lifelong program.
Gotcha.
Okay.
We might be in the suburbs by then, so.
How far?
Deerfield?
Oh, yeah, I know Deerfield. I used to live out there.
Maybe 40 minutes.
Yeah, so what we do for our clients, the dog I mentioned earlier, Doug, they did the lifelong program, okay, is for clients who don't do the lifelong program, they have to pay my hourly rate, which is like $275 for travel, okay, because it takes an hour of my time here, okay. is we do a discounted rate of $50 for the follow-ups. Okay, so since they're out in the suburbs and she paid for the expensive program, I go as an added bonus. If I have to come back out, it'll just be $50 instead of $275 for the trek there and back. Okay, so you get a discounted travel fee because it's a big investment. I understand that, right? And I don't suspect that I'm going to be going out to Deerfield 20 times because I'm like,
once or twice a year, or
if that, exactly. Okay, so the behavior program, that's what people, because I get a lot of clients who are like, oh, I thought I was have to pay $5,000. I go, no. I'm like, that's for like, if you want the warranty, if you want the peace of mind that will just address it if something comes up, right? Then we do that. So I have a client, for example. I trained their dog 12 years ago when I first started Canine Perspective in Chicago. My behavior program was $1,200 at the time, okay? Because I was building my business. No one was going to pay me $5,000. Something came up 2 years ago. No, 3 years, because it was during COVID, 3 years ago. And I did it, and I just charged them $50. And they're like, wait, you're not going to charge us for the class? I go, no. I was like, your program is lifelong. Like, you got me for cheap, but I'm a man of my word, right? Now, all my newer clients, obviously, is more expensive, but their dog is like 14 now, you know, and it's rare. I've seen them maybe since we first initially started training, like a handful of times in the course of 10 years, okay? But that's how that program works, okay? So it's completely up to you. I was actually going to bring that up to your attention if you wanted the peace of mind.
I'll have to talk to my fiance, but I think there's like the 12-week or the lifelong are the only options we would be like super interested in. Because if we're gonna train her, we may as well go the full, 9 yards.
Sure. When it comes to the 12-week, okay, because we have a variable of behavior, what's really going to dictate how far we get far along in the training, or how far, is going to be how well does the behavior do, okay? So let's say for whatever reason, the reactivity is a pain in the ass, and it takes me 5 classes to actually address it, okay? That technically leaves us 7 classes to work on building the off-leash stuff, okay? I've not had it happen where a client was not happy by the end of the program with what we accomplished. Like, we still get a ton done.
Theoretically, can add on a lesson or two.
Yes, you can also do that too, right? But I have a little bit of an ego where if a client comes in and they go, hey, Jesse, 6 classes, I go, I got 6 classes.
Good to hear for my sake. So.
You know, because I come and I go, I look at it like this. If you pay a plumber to fix your sink, when they leave, you expect that sink to be fixed. If it's not fixed, I would assume the plumber would come back and fix it free of charge, right? Like, that's how my brain works. A lot of trainers, it's like, okay, like, keep training and, you'll get there, right? I go, no, like, you need to accomplish it within the program so that the people go like, wow, this worked, I can do this, and now they're motivated to continue on with what we were doing, okay? So there are things, realistically speaking, around like, this is a limitation, I can't get it done. But for the most part, when I see something, I go, all right, I got this much time, this is what we're gonna do, and then as long as the owner is following through, we're gonna make that progress, okay? Question on any of that stuff?
No.
When
a really good job of explaining everything.
I've done this for 12 years, so when it comes to the collar, she's going to be on the Dog's Black Edition. Tina will send you the information. We sell it ourselves. You can get it online. I don't care where you get it from. I do care that you get the correct collar. Be mindful if you get it off of Chewy and or Amazon to double check, because sometimes they send out the wrong collar. Okay. Unfortunately, Doctra has a model called the 1900S model, but they have like 4 different versions.
You guys sell it on your website?
Correct. And we can send you the link. Okay.
I'll just buy it off you guys then.
If you guys buy it from us and something happens in the first 30 days, I swap it out for you, no problem. If something happens after the first 30 days, you do get a 1-year warranty. And what we do is we can just provide you with the loaner in the meantime.
How much is the collar?
It's around $350-ish with tax now. Okay. On top of whatever your training is.
Yeah,
okay.
I gotcha.
So if you're doing a 12-week program, you're probably looking at around 3,100-ish all in. And that's me. I feel like I'm over exaggerating, but our prices are all on our website. Okay. Aside from the collar itself. You also have the option, although most of the time it's not necessary. Okay. During the wintertime, we train here. During the spring, summertime, when the weather is nice, and even into the fall, I train out of Oz Park. Okay. Where we train doesn't matter. in terms of making progress, it usually comes down to what does the owner want? Some people are like, I really want to be outside to train because I want the experience. I go, sure, we train outside during the spring, summer. Otherwise, if they trained in the winter, we train where you came in, that little front foyer.
Yeah.
The way that I teach, I teach you how to find what's going to work for your dog in any given moment. It's just common sense stuff. So once you understand the method, you go, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to apply it to my neighborhood. Okay. We also record our sessions and then we send them to you afterwards, so you always have them as a frame of reference. Okay, because it's a lot of information. Okay, so then we started doing this because of COVID. Nobody wanted me to touch their dog. So before COVID, I used to train the dog in front of you, give the dog back, and then train you. Now I just train you to train your dog. Okay, but it's so much information that people will forget or misremember things. So I go, now you have your video as a reference point.
Question about that. Is there any way we can get the video for this?
Yeah, we can send you a link.
I just want to see I would like my fiance to she would have liked to be here if she could.
Yeah, what's today? Saturday?
Yeah.
It'll most likely be up by tomorrow, and then I'll send Tina the link.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you guys she can review it.
Perfect. Yeah.
So we do that. The only time we typically don't record is if we do an in-home, one because of privacy reasons for the client, but then sometimes clients go, no, please record, just send us the video afterwards. And then the other thing is it's a pain in the ass to set up and then break down.
Yeah.
And I'm usually back to back with clients, but that's not a problem if you want it. If we did it in-home and you want to record it, you just let me know and then I'll make sure to do so. So the other option you have is if you wanted to do in-home. If you're doing a regular training program, it's just, again, $50 per class. So like sometimes what clients will do is they'll do like the first 2 to 3 classes here, get all the basics down, and then they go, okay, we're ready for our in-home. And then they'll do the one in-home, pay the $50, and then they'll assess like, wow, that was pretty good. We're gonna practice what we learned, see how they feel, and then they go, we're good at meeting at the facility again because everything's going well. I go, great, we're back to the facility. Other cases, they want me to do another in-home, they'll pay the fee, and they can, structure it how they like, okay? Questions on any of that? Let me think here. Oh, a very common question that we get is when does the e-collar go away? In my book, when you need it, it doesn't. Okay, so that means when you're walking your dog, you have the collar on. If she's gonna be off leash anywhere, you have the collar on. If you have guests coming over, you have the collar on. If she's a great dog, when it's just you guys home alone chilling, you don't need the collar, okay? It's not because of the training methods, it's not because I'm not a good trainer. It's what's called opportunistic behavior, which is, do you drive?
Yeah.
Do you go on the expressway ever? Do you go the speed limit?
Not always.
Yeah, not always, right? Most people don't go the speed limit.
Yeah.
You see a squad car, what happens?
You know the speed limit.
Yeah, you go the speed limit. So that's what's called opportunistic behavior. You know, as long as there's not a squad car, you can get away with speeding because the cop's not there to give you a ticket.
Yeah, so the fact that she's got the collar on, she knows that.
Exactly, there's threat of consequence,
Yeah,
okay?
totally.
That's just how this stuff works. The reason is we're relying on a third party, your caller, to correct the dog.
Yeah, sure.
But if she corrects a dog, their teeth, right? She goes, as long as you have teeth and a mouth, you can bite me, so I respect you personally. You see that? But because we're using an external tool like your prong collar, your e-collar, when the dog learns, oh, when that's not present, you can't do anything.
Would you use them in tandem with each other?
You can, yeah.
So like, I personally, and obviously our training sessions would help. If I had a normal collar on her right now, no chance I can get her into heel, and she would pull and be a pain in the ass. But since I can do that, she somewhat goes in line. So like, you could theoretically put an e-collar and a prong collar on.
Yes, they don't interact with each other negatively. They work really well with each other. So everybody, it just comes on the personal preference.
Yeah.
You might find, hey, wow, like this is working it's working better than the prong collar. I'm just gonna have a flat collar and the e-collar, right? But your fiance, I'm assuming smaller, right?
Yes.
She might go, no, I like having the prong with the e-collar because it gives me the most control, okay?
Yeah.
So like I had a client, she was probably 100 pounds. She had a 140-pound Great Dane who was leash reactive, and she lived in Bucktown. So she was like, everywhere I go, there's a dog, okay? So her dog was on a prong collar and an e-collar just in case she turned the corner. If her dog became reactive in the early stages, she had the immediacy of the prong collar while she was trying to do the e-collar, okay? Every case is different, but most people end up finding themselves going just to the remote collar because it does everything a prong can do but more,
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I would recommend she should be on a 3 millimeter. You have her on a 2.25.
I'm just gonna write this down
Yeah.
really quick.
3 millimeter or 3 mm Herm Sprenger. And I don't recommend an alligator clip. I don't think you have an alligator clip on this one. This one looks like a standard one.
Yeah, I can show it, right? These, it just,
So yeah, so those come off. So those are, that's the 2.25 size. She should be on the 3 millimeter.
okay.
Okay.
That makes sense.
It also should be fitted up at the top of the neck. When it's at the base of the neck, that's where they have more muscle, more skin, so it's less effective. But the way that it's sized, it's going to keep sliding down because it's a little bit too big. Okay, but it's also just the wrong prong size.
Yep.
The question on any of that stuff so far?
How would we go about,
Starting.
yeah,
So you'd contact Tina. Okay. So usually I turn around and I tell her like these are the like I have 4 consults today. So I'm gonna send her an email and go everybody's name, what I recommend, and then she'll either turn around and in some cases, some instances, the client themselves is like I want to start right away, and they'll turn around and email her. Okay, you could talk to your fiance, determine what you would like to do. Okay, whether you want to do 12-week or lifelong, whatever, and then you send Tina the email and say, hey, Tina, sign us up. We want to do 12 classes, and here's our schedules, because that's what she's going to need, right? So you're just giving her right off the bat all the information. She's then going to turn around and go, here's the contract form. Please feel free to read it. Please feel free to ask any questions about it, okay? And while she's looking and cross-referencing the schedules. Once that form is submitted, she goes, okay, you're serious, right? And then she'll say, here are some times or whatever, and then she'll invoice you. Okay, now we are paying full before any work gets started. Okay, if we do payment programs, which we do, you can schedule the payment program however you'd like. The program just has to be paid in full before we get started.
we can, yeah, I mean, we can pay in full before.
Okay. And then she'll send you the invoice for the caller and everything, and then you'll have your date locked in. We do have a 48-hour cancellation policy. So as long as you cancel outside of 48 hours, we're good. You don't lose the class. We can always reschedule. If you cancel within 48 hours, we give everybody a last-minute cancellation, okay? Because we understand shit happens, you wake up sick, what have you, okay? After that first one, if you cancel again within 48 hours, it would lose you the class just because it's hard to fill in gaps, okay? So we got you reach out to her. Otherwise, she will reach out to you and say, this is what Jesse's recommendations are. And the same thing, she'll ask for your schedule and all that stuff. Please provide windows if you have them. So like if you're like Monday through Friday, 7 to 8, 9 or whatever, like that's a 2-hour window. Saturday, we're free all day. Stuff like that makes it a lot easier because I have multiple clients. So she's looking for gaps.
My only thing is that my fiance sometimes has to work late. She usually knows by Monday what days of the week.
Sure.
But I mean, we can, if you guys give us like a couple options, we can always
Yeah. You know,
figure it out.
that's all stuff that she can. I've worked with people that were ER doctors, nurses, and stuff that just had these crazy hectic schedules.
For sure.
I'm like, it's not a problem. We understand.
I'll never have a problem, but like, I would think it would be very helpful for us both to be at every lesson. So.
Yes, I agree. The first 2 are always the most important because that's where all the learning is.
Totally.
With any behavioral stuff are also very important just because it's behavior and it's you learn a lot like how to read dog behavior and stuff like that. So, but otherwise, if everybody can be there at once, it makes things a lot easier. Okay. So we covered when's the caller go away. If you're doing a longer program, typically I would say by class 9, maybe 10, we should be good with behavior. We should be already working on off-leash stuff, okay? Is typically at that point, I'll recommend that the owners start to space out their classes, okay, to give you time to practice. So by class 9 or 10, I would gamble we have the reactivity in check, we have behavior, a good understanding on it, we have that in check, we have all the commands that we want, and you already are learning how to transfer them to off-leash, okay? Is you go off, you do some training for a month or 2, you come back and you sign up, you say, I'd like to have class 10.
Yeah.
And on class 10, I go, show me what you got. And you show me, I go, okay, this is incorrect, this is screwed up, this is how we fix it. And then you go off and you do some more training, okay? almost always people misremember things and they come back doing everything wrong, and I have to like help them fix it.
Yeah.
So having the space between classes um, gives you more time to really build towards off leash, because off leash doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. And then sometimes the owners will have a couple of classes and they'll ask, like, can I just pocket these? And if I ever need them in the future, I can use them. I go, sure. I don't got a problem with that. As long as you're conveying to us, I'm going to stop here, I'm going to save these, and I'll call you when I need you. I go, I have no problem with that. Okay, so that's also an option for you. Other times, clients like just doing them back to back to back to back to back. So they'll do all 12 classes in a row. I also don't have a problem with it. I just suggest towards the end to space them out to give you time to practice.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Otherwise, I don't care. You've paid.
Last few can be like almost correction lessons.
Yeah, fixing
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
Maybe something happened that you weren't suspecting and you would like to address it. I can address it. I don't limit my clients according to what they purchase. So if you only bought a 6-class program, I'm like, we're only going to do this. We're only going to cover this, right?
Yeah.
I go, you have my time. What would you like to address? And then I come in and I address it. As long as we got the foundation down of heal, we're pretty good to work on anything we need to. Okay. Anything else?
No, you've been super impressive.
Otherwise, that's pretty much it. Yeah, it's just now, talk to your fiance, figure out what you'd like to do.
Totally.
And then if you want more information on the behavior program, you can ping Tina and then she'll get back to you. There's no rush. Take your time. Sometimes just be aware if you're asking questions on the contract, which you're more than welcome to, is, it's first come, first serve. So then people are being booked and then they'll turn around like, okay, we're ready. And then Tina's like, well, he doesn't have availability now because people are booking. Doesn't mean that I'm never going to be available, but people have gotten upset in the past where they're like, what the hell? We're like, well, it's because you're asking questions, which is fine, but we're a business. It's first come, first serve,
I get that.
So otherwise the contract's it's pretty straightforward, all the typical stuff. That's pretty much it. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you'd like to learn more just about how the training works, if you go to my YouTube channel, if you go through, it's actually easier because it's under my name, Jesus San Miguel. If you go to my website, canineperspective.com,